Alright guys, before we end up, let's talk something about CSS Grid versus Flexbox. Guys, it is easy to get confused when to use what. Let me tell you one thing. Both Grid and Flexbox are independent. Using either of these, you can create any kind of layout. Yeah, and it is also true that Flexbox is a one-dimensional layout system, but still we can create any kind of layout with Flexbox that we have been creating, and we have already seen how we can use Flexbox to create our layout. Guys, both Flexbox and Grid has their own advantages, and obviously there are a lot more things can be done using CSS Grid. Also, the CSS Grid layout system is the newer layout system than the Flexbox. So it may happen that you would like to use Flexbox over Grid because you already knew it. Guys, it is totally a personal choice. So whatever you prefer, you can use it. Whether you want to use Flexbox or whether you want to Grid, that's totally depends upon you. But I would suggest that get your hands dirty with both Flexbox and Grid and then decide which suits better for you. And I would also suggest the combination of both Grid and Flexbox is really great. See, Flexbox is a one-dimensional system. Yeah. So whenever the items will always remain in a single line or a single row, then you can use Flexbox to keep them in a single row. But yeah, whenever the items or the columns breaks down into new rows or new lines, whenever the screen sizes reduces, there you can use CSS Grid. Don't worry guys, these things will get handy once you practice them. So for now I would suggest that just practice, practice and practice for both Flexbox and CSS Grid. Alright, perfect. Now let's talk about the assignment for CSS Grid. In the CSS Grid topic, actually we have two assignments. First is the easy one. You can easily create that layout. This is the assignment level 2. So here we will discuss something how you should be taking the approach. So first of all, let's have a look of this layout. Let's go from top to bottom. Great. Yeah. Now let's go. Here we have our header. So you know how you can create header and then get over this. This is the hero section actually. You know that. And then you can get the header or navbar over this hero section. Now if you look at the layout from top to bottom, you will find that each and every rows, or you can say the rows, if you look into the layout keeping in mind as a grid, so you can think it of as a first column or second column, then again another column, so on. There are different columns, so these are the different columns and rows inside this layout. So how you can take the approach, I don't know whether you should be creating rows or not, that depends upon you, but obviously you will have to create your columns. And as this is the assignment for the grid, so you will have to use Grid to create this layout. But it is not that you cannot use Flexbox. The Flexbox can be used depending upon where you can use. For example, this header content will always remain in a single line, so you should go with the Flexbox. Similarly, if you go down, this front end design and 90% and so on, this thing will always remain in a single line, so here again you can use Flexbox. Same goes for here. Again here these things can be these things can be aligned using Flexbox. Same goes for here, these icons and this content can be aligned using Flexbox. And yeah, and so on. Here we have, and for the footer also you can use Flexbox. But to create columns, because these columns will get into a single row when you will make it responsive, when the layout will go for the smaller screen, this column will break into new rows. So here you should be using for grid. So again, how you use that, you have the idea how to create columns, how to create rows, that depends upon you, but I'll give you one hint here. So if you look at the layout, first column, second column, again these are the different columns. The thing is that you can create a like universal class container to which you can apply 4 columns, maybe, yeah, 4 columns, and then that will be a universal class that can be used on different elements. Then you can span 2 for these columns, then again span 2 for this column, similarly span 2, then this would be a span 1, span 1, span 1 1 1. You don't have to use the span 1 1 just because by default each and every element has a span 1. Then again span 2 for this column, span 2 for this column, and so on. Yeah, span 2, span 1, span 1. Here whether you create a grid or not, again that depends upon you. I think there's no requirement for creating any grid for this item. Yeah, that's all about this assignment. I've given you a lot of hint. I'm sure you will be getting this layout very easily. Perfect, and all the best.